because missing one update could cost you hundreds of pounds, points on your license, or even your right to drive. And I don't want that happening to you. This channel exists to keep you informed. So make sure you're part of it, right? So if you drive on UK roads, whether you've been driving for 30 years or you've just passed your test, this video is genuinely important for you to watch today, because there is a law change coming that a huge number of drivers in this country simply do not know about. And the scary thing is, not knowing about it isn't going to save you from the fine. Ignorance of the law, as they say, is no defense. So rather than letting you get caught out, let's sit down together and go through everything you need to know nice and clearly, so you can get on with your driving life without any nasty surprises landing in your letterbox. Now, before we get into the detail, let's just take a second to understand why driving laws change in the first place, because some people hear about a new rule and their first reaction is frustration. Why are they changing things again? Yes, and that's completely understandable. But the truth is, the roads in the United Kingdom are changing constantly. The technology in our vehicles is changing. The way we use our phones is changing. The number of electric vehicles is growing rapidly, and the sheer volume of traffic on our roads is higher than it's ever been. The government and the DVLA have to respond to those changes, and sometimes that means updating the rules to keep everyone safer. So whilst a new law might feel like a bit of a hassle at first, most of the time it's genuinely there for a good reason. So what exactly is changing? Well, one of the biggest areas of change that has been causing a real stir amongst UK drivers relates to mobile phone use behind the wheel. Now, you might be thinking, hang on, using your phone while driving is already illegal. And you'd be right, it has been illegal for a good while now. But the law has been tightened significantly, and the way it now works is much broader and much stricter than what many drivers still believe to be the case. For years, the common understanding was that the law only applied to making calls or sending texts while physically driving. A lot of people genuinely believed that if they were parked up or sitting in a traffic jam with the engine running, they could scroll through their phone without breaking the law. That loophole has now been firmly closed. The updated legislation makes it absolutely clear that you cannot use a handheld mobile phone while you are in a vehicle, full stop. It doesn't matter if you're stationary at a red light. It doesn't matter if you're in a queue of traffic that hasn't moved for 20 minutes. If the engine is running and you are in control of that vehicle, picking up your phone is against the law. And here's where the fines come in, because this is the part that really makes people sit up and listen. If you are caught using your handheld mobile phone while driving or while stationary with the engine on, you are looking at a fixed penalty notice of £200 and 6 points on your license. Now, 6 points on a standard license is already very serious, but if you are a new driver who passed your test within the last 2 years, 6 points means your license is automatically revoked. You'd have to go back to square one, theory test, practical test, the lot, and if the case goes to court, which it can do, the fine can rise to over £1,000. That's not a small amount of money for most people, and for a lot of drivers, losing their license could mean losing their job. So this really isn't something to be casual about. But let's be clear about what the law does and doesn't cover, because there is some nuance here that's worth understanding properly. The law applies to handheld devices. So if your phone is sitting in your hand or on your lap while you use it, that's illegal. However, if your phone is mounted in a proper cradle and you're using it hands-free, that is still permitted for things like navigation. You are allowed to use a hands-free device to make calls as long as you are not holding the phone. What you cannot do, even with a hands-free setup, is interact with your phone in a way that takes your attention off the road. So if you're reaching over to type a destination into your sat-nav app while you're moving, that's still dangerous driving territory, even if the phone is technically in a mount. The law around distracted driving is separate but equally important, and police officers do have the discretion to pull you over if they believe your attention is compromised, regardless of whether you're technically following the hands-free rules. Now let's talk about another area of UK driving law that has seen significant changes, and this one catches out a surprising number of people. The rules around driving in clean air zones and low emission zones. These zones have been expanding across British cities at quite a pace, and if you're not keeping up with where they are and what vehicles are affected, you can find yourself facing a charge or a fine simply for driving down a road you've driven down 100 times before. Birmingham, Bath, Bristol, Bradford, Portsmouth, Newcastle, Sheffield. The list of cities with some form of clean air zone or charging zone keeps growing, and London, of course, has had the ultra-low emission zone operating for some time now. The way these zones work is that certain vehicles, typically older petrol or diesel cars that don't meet particular emission standards, are either charged a daily fee to enter the zone, or in some cases are not permitted to enter at all without paying a penalty. The charges vary by city and by vehicle type, but for a non-compliant car in many of these zones, you could be looking at a daily charge of anywhere between 8 and 12 pounds just to drive through. Miss that charge or not realize you're even in a zone, and the penalty charge notice that follows can easily exceed 100 pounds, and repeat offenses or failure to pay can push costs much higher. Over a week or a month of daily driving, this adds up to a very significant amount of money that many drivers simply haven't budgeted for. The important thing to understand here is that ignorance really isn't a protection. The zones are signposted and the local councils have made information available online. But if you are driving through an unfamiliar city, or if a zone has recently expanded into an area you thought was outside of it, you might not realize you've incurred a charge until the notice arrives in the post. So it genuinely is worth checking the boundary of any clean air zone in cities you plan to drive through, particularly if your vehicle is older and might not meet the required emission standard. Most councils have online tools where you can type in your number plate and check whether your vehicle would be charged or not. It takes about 2 minutes and could save you a lot of money. Moving on, there's another change that affects a specific group of drivers, and it's one that people often don't hear about until it's too late, and that's the rules around driving licenses as we get older. In the United Kingdom, when you reach the age of 70, your driving license does not automatically continue. It expires, and you have to renew it. Now, this isn't a new rule exactly, but what many older drivers don't realize is that the renewal isn't just a formality. When you renew at 70 and then every 3 years after that, you are required to self-declare your medical fitness to drive. And the rules around what medical conditions must be declared to the DVLA have been updated and clarified, with more conditions now falling under the category of things you are legally obliged to report. Failing to declare a relevant medical condition to the DVLA is not just a technicality. It can invalidate your car insurance entirely. That means that if you were involved in an accident and it came to light that you had a condition you should have declared but didn't, your insurer could refuse to pay out. You could find yourself personally liable for the costs of damage or injury, which in serious cases could run into tens or even hundreds of thousands of pounds. The DVLA takes this very seriously, and deliberately failing to declare a condition can result in a fine of up to £1,000 in its own right, separate from any insurance implications. The conditions that need to be declared cover quite a wide range, including epilepsy, severe sleep apnea, diabetes if you're on certain medications, conditions affecting your vision, and a number of neurological conditions. If you have recently been diagnosed with anything that you think might affect your ability to drive safely, the right thing to do is to speak to your GP and then check the DVLA's guidance, because this really is an area where being proactive protects both you and everyone else on the road. Now let's have a chat about something that's been causing quite a bit of confusion lately, and that's the rules around overtaking cyclists and pedestrians. The updated highway code, which came into force a couple of years ago, introduced what's known as a hierarchy of road users. This essentially means that the most vulnerable people on the road, pedestrians, then cyclists, then motorcyclists, have greater priority in certain situations, and drivers of cars and larger vehicles have a greater responsibility to look out for them. This was a fairly significant cultural shift in how we think about road use in this country, and not everyone got the memo. Specifically, the guidance on overtaking cyclists changed. The recommendation is now that when you pass a cyclist, you should give them at least 1.5 meters of space if you're traveling at higher speeds. Think dual carriageways or faster rural roads, and at least 1 meter at lower speeds. You're also supposed to wait behind a cyclist rather than attempting to squeeze past if there isn't a safe amount of room to overtake properly. Now, a lot of drivers already do this instinctively because it's just the sensible and decent thing to do, but the fact that it's now more clearly laid out in the highway code means that if an incident occurs and it's found that a driver passed a cyclist too closely, that driver is more exposed legally than they would have been before. Similarly, the rules around pedestrians at junctions have changed. Pedestrians who are waiting to cross at a junction, even if they haven't stepped off the pavement yet, now have priority when a vehicle is turning into that road. So if you're turning left or right at a junction and there's someone standing on the pavement who clearly intends to cross, you should give way to them. Again, many courteous drivers were already doing this, but it's now a codified rule rather than just good manners, which changes the legal picture if something goes wrong. Let's also spend a moment talking about the rules around driving in adverse weather conditions, because this is an area where UK drivers are perhaps a little complacent, largely because our winters, while gray and miserable, are often less dramatic than what you'd experience in other countries, but driving in fog, heavy rain, snow, or icy conditions with inappropriate tires, inadequate lighting, or excessive speed for the conditions is something that police and courts take seriously, and the law does provide for significant penalties if dangerous driving in poor conditions causes an accident. One specific thing worth highlighting is the rule around clearing your windscreen before driving. It might sound obvious, but every winter you see drivers setting off with just a small porthole scraped into their icy windscreen, the rest of the glass completely obscured. That is illegal. Your entire windscreen must be clear before you move the vehicle. The same goes for snow on your roof. If snow slides off your roof and hits the vehicle behind you, or causes another driver to take evasive action, you could be charged with driving with an insecure load, which carries a fine and points. These are the sorts of things that feel minor but can have very serious consequences, both on the road and legally. Something else that's quietly changed and that a lot of drivers haven't picked up on is the rules around lane discipline on motorways, particularly around smart motorways. The use of the hard shoulder as a running lane on smart motorways has been one of the most controversial road safety topics in recent years. And while there have been ongoing debates about the future of smart motorways, the law as it currently stands means that if a lane is shown as open with a posted speed limit above it, you are expected to use it as a normal lane. If there is a red X above a lane, you must not drive in it. And this is now enforced by cameras. Being caught driving in a lane displaying a red X can result in a fixed penalty notice and points on your license. Also worth knowing is that middle lane hogging on motorways has been an endorsable offense for some time now, though enforcement has been patchy. Police do have the power to issue fixed penalty notices for careless driving when a driver sits in the middle lane unnecessarily when the left-hand lane is clear. It might feel like a minor irritation when you see it, but if you're the one doing it, you could technically be pulled over and fined. As we wrap up, the overall message here is really quite straightforward. UK driving laws are not static, they evolve, and the responsibility is on you as a driver to keep up with those changes. It's not the most exciting thing in the world to do, but spending 20 minutes every now and then checking what's changed, whether that's visiting the DVLA website, reading updates to the highway code, or watching videos exactly like this one, could genuinely save you from a very expensive and stressful situation. A fine of over £1,000 is a big hit for most households. Points on your license affect your insurance premiums for years, and losing your license altogether can turn your entire life upside down. So please share this with anyone you know who drives, your parents, your siblings, your mates who've just passed their test. The more people who are aware of these changes, the safer our roads become for all of us, and the fewer people end up with a nasty letter in the post that they really weren't expecting. Stay safe out there, look after each other on the road, and make sure you're driving with both the confidence and the knowledge that comes from genuinely understanding the rules. See you in the next one. Because missing one update could cost you hundreds of pounds, points on your license, or even your right to drive. And I don't want that happening to you. This channel exists to keep you informed, so make sure you're part of it.